This is URBONUS podcast, guys. Welcome aboard, and I'm just glad to introduce you my old friend who hasn't been on the pod for a while. So I'm super excited to have him here to listen to his thoughts. This is Errick McCollum, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. It's been too long, but I'm glad to be back and to share the mic with you, brother.
Yeah, I believe that you have a lot of things to say about EuroLeague basketball. We are 6 games into the season. A lot of interesting stuff had happened. We discuss these things weekly, but we hadn't listened to you for a while, and we wanted to actually to continue to have you and another basketball person on the podcast, just as like we have Mike James before the season doing a review of the best transfers of the summer. We had one active EuroLeague player close to make the pod, but he had some force majeure on Sunday, so he couldn't participate. But for sure, I believe that in the further pods with Errick, we will also have some more basketball persons on it. Errick, I mean, you have actually a lot to say. I mean, you have a great season and in Izmir, and I was about to ask you about it, but probably first of all, the good thing is that we just have you here on the podcast because you had this crazy situation on Saturday, I believe, this crazy fan encounter in Izmir. Can you just get us through what had happened and what's going on with that crazy fan who was, tried to assault you with his knife in his hand?
Yeah, so basically, I was just going to the mall, like normal, with my wife and my son, to get something to eat. And on a Saturday, the mall is extremely packed. It's a lot of traffic, and the way the parking garage is set up, it's one way. So there's maybe 3 or 4 cars behind me, and there's a woman who is getting ready to leave. She has a stroller and a baby, and so anybody who has a family, they understand that when you have to pack up the stroller in the trunk, you have to put your baby in the car seat. It could take you 30 seconds to maybe 1 minute. So meanwhile, I'm sitting there waiting, and then some guy randomly, within maybe 15 seconds of waiting, starts banging on my door. And so I turn and I look, and he's speaking in Turkish, and you could tell he's extremely upset because I'm waiting for the lady. But this is normal. Like, you wait for a parking spot, you can wait 30 seconds, have some patience. And, he's not understanding. I think there's a language barrier. So now I'm just pointing to the car so that he sees I'm waiting for her. Then I will go, after continue to go back and forth. He's not understanding. And so, I get out the car and I tell him, look, just go to your car. It's going to take me, 20 seconds. Go to your car. I'm not about to argue with you. He's still going back and forth. So I just get back in my car, whatever, ignore him. I'm not going to take my energy there. I got my son here, my wife here. you're not going to see that side of me. Like, it's something small, Errick, let it go. So then the lady leaves and I pull into the parking spot. Mind you, this probably has taken 45 seconds, so not long at all. And now I'm thinking everything's okay. So I get out the car to get my son out. And when I go to get him, I see the guy parked behind me, but he's not parked. He's basically blocking traffic. And so now, instead of there being 5 or 6 cars, now there's more like, 10 to 12 cars. And he gets out and he's reaching in his door. And I'm looking and I understand, like, in America, if somebody's reaching in the door, I understand that this is probably gun. But in Europe, I know that the gun laws, everything is different. So, like, I'm not as worried. I'm not as, like, scared, because I'm like, okay, the worst he's going to have is a weapon, but it's not a gun. And he finally grabs it and he has it by his leg and he's holding it, trying to hide it on his thigh, like holding his arm straight down. And my wife sees it immediately. She says, Errick, he has a knife. And I tell her to get behind the car, leave the baby in the car. And she's like, okay, just watch. He has a knife. And so I position myself behind like a boundary, which is just basically something that stops cars from running into the mall. And it's not high. It's probably like a little bit below my knee. But I step over this and I just sit there and I wait for him. And I'm like, okay, like, I was trying to avoid confrontation, but now I had to protect my family. So this is what it's going to have to be. And, he comes, he approaches me with the knife, and he's probably 2 feet away from me. And we're just staring at each other, eye contact. And, I'm waiting for him to step over this boundary, because if he steps over this boundary, I'm following with the punches immediately, anything to protect myself and my family. And he understood. I think he didn't want to take a punch, because in order, he would have had to take one to get to me, because he would have had to step over this. And this was, probably not what he wanted to do. And when he saw that I was not scared, and in that moment you're in a fight or flight. Your instincts take over. You may feel like you might be scared or something, but when it comes to your wife and your children, trust me, you will not be scared. You will be clear-headed, and you will find a way to get through the situation. And eventually, after 10 seconds of us staring at each other, he backs up and he's still talking. And I just tell him to get out of here, go. And luckily, there was 3 or 4 good Turkish Samaritans. They ran up, they grabbed him, and they grabbed him by the forearms and the wrist because he had a weapon. And then they restrained him, and they was pushing him to get in the car, telling him to go. And then all this time, his daughter jumps out, and I didn't even know there was somebody else. And she was 16 or 17 years old, if I had to guess, around this age. And she's crying. She's hysterical. She's like, "Dad, let's go. Stop it. Stop it. What are you doing?" And then I go and take a picture, the license plate. And, his daughter is trying to smack my phone away, and I still get the picture. And then meanwhile, they're so distracted on me that my wife has recorded, the incident, and we have a picture of his face and everything. So, I tell the GM, I tell the team, I tell my team manager, and we fast forwarded to the police just because, okay, I'm safe. Nothing happened to me. But to pull a knife out on somebody, this is crazy. And, maybe I can't prevent my situation from happening, but maybe I can protect the next person. If somebody goes through this, or if somebody doesn't have a voice. Luckily, I had people who could hear me. I had people who cared about me, who supported me, and who pursued this. And, maybe I can make it better for the next individual, or maybe somebody will think twice about pulling out a knife over something so minute and small when you're talking about a man with his family just going to eat. So, it was just a hectic week, just dealing with that. And, I'm just thankful that, everybody's safe or okay. Like, I was mostly concerned about my wife. She's pregnant. My son was in a car. He was okay. So, I wouldn't wish that on nobody, and sometimes you got to deal with some craziness, but I understand that, Turkey is a beautiful country. I love it here. We have great fans, and, I won't let one person, ruin my image of Turkish people or of Izmir as a city, because Turkish people have been nothing but friendly and loving to my family. And I appreciate the outreach and support from everybody who messaged me and all the mentions on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, that was scary experience for sure. It's pathetic to know that some people cannot be patient for 30 or 45 seconds, as you mentioned, in the parking area just to pass you by. I mean, it's just crazy. And probably for sure that guy wasn't a basketball fan, because if he was, he knew that you were killing for this city's team. I mean, Errick is averaging 27 points in the Champions League and 7 assists. He was already leading the EuroCup in points. Last year, he's a top scorer, probably one of the top scorers in the whole Europe and all competitions. Again, so probably tells a lot that you kind of adjusted quickly. You're happy with your current role in Izmir. Have you been invited to the doping control yet? No?
Oh, yeah. I think after the gala game, I hit the game winner. They took me for the doping control. So I made a little joke. I laughed about it. I said, I guess a 34-year-old is not supposed to continue to improve and get better, but
yeah, I read some funny stories about doping control. I was actually finishing the book about Lamar Odom. Actually, the great book, I think the title is like From Darkness to Light. And he mentioned that before 2004 Athens Olympics, he used fake penis to cheat on drug test because he was smoking weed basically every day. So he wasn't about to pass by the drug test to make the Olympic roster. So he Googled and he just found some fake penis, to fake the test. And he used he also used it. I think that he was so paranoid that he might get caught up that he used the trainer's pee, I think, because sometimes I'm not an expert in faking, doping control tests, but there was some issue with the temperature. So if that was fake, they might check that the temperature was not, hot enough, let's say warm enough. So they used trainer's pee. I mean, there was a lot of interesting things I got to know actually about cheating on drug tests. And from what I heard, from what I read, it was also in the NBA because sometimes they do some tests, and he was on cocaine as well at some part of his career, and he also had to do some cheating with his bodyguard to get past. But anyway, that's a lot of off topic. Yeah, and let's talk about the EuroLeague basketball. My colleague, my co-host of the pod, Augustus, told that since I had you in the podcast after like 3 or 4 months, something like that, maybe shorter. You'll have plenty to say that I won't need to prepare for this pod, because Errick will have a lot of ideas about this podcast. And the main topic is top 3 early season surprises and disappointments. We will try to bring our 3 choices, but just before we start, I give you a reminder to follow BasketNews channel on YouTube, and also press like and subscribe our channel as well. And also you can do the same on all the audio platforms, and for example on Spotify you can give us 5 stars, because it really helps us, our channel and our podcast to grow. So yeah, by the way, one more promo thing this week. Make sure you're following BasketNews Instagram account, because on Wednesday, I think our colleague Martina Motom will have an interview with Dwayne Bacon. He recently joined Panathinaikos. A lot of interesting stuff is happening around the team, so for sure I think that is gonna be exciting Instagram live on Wednesday. And yeah, let's begin, Mr. McCollum. What would be your biggest surprise early into the season?
For me, I think it's an easy choice. Baskonia. All summer, no one talked about them. Not about the team, not about the rosters, not about the signer, not about the makeup. There were a lot of question marks. They were kind of slow in the market. We did not know what to expect, what we were going to see. And, there were a lot of first timers in the EuroLeague. Even though they were great talents, they've had success many other places. Usually when you have some first timers in the EuroLeague, you don't know what to expect. And, I called it early in the summer. I said the most underrated signing when we last time were here was Darius Thompson. I said, as somebody no one's talking about, he's elite level point guard, and he's showing it. This is a guy who's shooting 55% from 3. He's averaging 12 points a game, 7 assists. He's kind of the engine, the maestro to the team. He's running everything, organizing, and he's been excellent. And then obviously the clear choice that everyone's talking about, Marcus Howard. I mean, he's only playing 21 minutes a game. He's scoring 19 points a game. That's insane when you think about the EuroLeague level. And he's shooting 46% from 3. And it's not like he's shooting 1 or 2. This is a guy who has 50 attempts. So I think with that, volume of shots, we understand that this is an elite shooter. And I had question marks just because first time in Europe, going to the EuroLeague, dealing with the physicality, how him and Darius would mesh together, Darius Thompson, the point guard. So, just seeing that, how they're using him, they started off using him more as a 1, I think early in the season when I was watching the games, and then they realized that he's such a gifted scorer. We're just going to slide him to the 2. And I think that's what encouraged him probably to bring Perrier Henry, to give him another option at point guard, so that they have Thompson and Henry. So now they have 2 elite level playmakers, 2 guys who can be top 5 in assists in the EuroLeague and who are also defensive minded. So I'm really impressed with Baskonia, and I did not see this coming. The fan support, what they bring, but they've been excellent, and they have the best offense in the EuroLeague. I mean, 91 points a game, and they're explosive.
Yeah, I think they had multiple 100 points, both in the EuroLeague and ACB League, which is really rare here in Europe. And I have Baskonia as my biggest surprise of the early season as well. Basically, for the 3 main reasons. You already mentioned 2 of them. As I checked, Baskonia has 3 of 6 best rookie scorers in the EuroLeague. For sure, it's Marcus Howard. He's the 4th best scorer in the competition. He's averaging, as I mentioned, 19 points just in 20-21 minutes. There's Darius Thompson, and there's Mike Kotsar, Estonian big man, humble guy, hustle guy, also EuroLeague rookie, coming from Hamburg. And as I mentioned, I mean, the GM of Baskonia, Alberto Salazar, once again showed why he has this experience, this great eye on prospects, on EuroLeague rookies. You can remember that Baskonia brought a lot of interesting rookies in the recent years. It all starts from Shane Larkin. That's why we had all those comparisons between Marcus Howard and Shane Larkin. Mike James, he also started from Baskonia on the EuroLeague level. I think that Shaman Shields, Darun Hillard, these guys also started over there, and Baskonia was the team which gave the chance. And that's why I also didn't have high hopes on them, because they just had too many rookies, too many rookie players. Dalton Holmes, we cannot forget him. He's still getting adjusted. He might be very interesting Simone Fontecchio replacement. He still needs some time, but I mean, they were young team, EuroLeague experience wise. So I just didn't see that coming. And as individual players you mentioned, this is something exceptional. For example, Marcus Howard, he's averaging 36 points per 40 minutes. You mentioned very high volume shooter, him being a very high volume shooter. And I checked the EuroLeague history, and the second best player by points per 40 minutes was Alfonso Ford, the famous Alfonso Ford that he has his, the award, the top scorer EuroLeague award is named by Alfonso Ford. He was averaging 30.2 points per game per 40 minutes. And there was also Miloš Vujanić in 2002 and 3 seasons. So, I mean, I know that sample size is small. It's only 6 games into the season, and we can expect that Marcus Howard's numbers might drop. Teams, will be better in scouting. They will be more focused on him. But I mean, Marcus Howard is the player which brings a lot of good emotions. For example, I have a friend which literally starts to cry when he eats very tasty food, very tasty dish. There is some syndrome when he literally has his, tears dropping when he feels that dish is good, which is probably bad when his wife or friend makes some bad food, and when they notice that he's not crying, it means that he cannot lie. The food is gross. It's terrible. So I have kind of the same feeling with Marcus Howard. I just burst out laughing when I saw him making all those shots, because a lot of these shots are just incredible. Sometimes he's making some unguardable shots. So it's going to be very interesting to see the adjustments of the opposing teams, how they're going to try to handle this Marcus Howard offensive sparks he already did early in the season. The other thing what I wanted to say about Darius Thompson, I mean, there were some doubts about him. Is he vocal enough to be the main point guard of the team? Is he aggressive enough, to lead the team? And especially coming into the situation like in Baskonia, where he's about to start, where he's about to play an important role from the beginning, not just adjust as a backup like Carson Edwards, for example, or some other guys. But dude was just incredible. And I just love not only his on-court performance, but better than me what kind of guy he is. And I remember when Peria Henry joined Baskonia, I was trying to dig in how Howard, how Darius Thompson are feeling about the signing. Because if I'm a player, if I'm a point guard, and I see Baskonia bringing Peria Henry, who has status in the EuroLeague, I'm not sure how I'm feeling. Is he going to steal my minutes? Is he going to steal my role? Because Peria Henry is another player who needs the ball in his hands. I don't feel comfortable about that. Although I'm doing good on the court, although the team is winning, although I'm having a good stat line, Peria Henry is coming to my team. I'm kind of scared. And I try to dig in how these players are feeling. And from what I understood, Darius was just happy that they're going to have more depth on their backcourt, that they're going to have Peria Henry's experience, how much he's going to help the team to, consistently win all those games and to keep the team on track. So it tells a lot about the guy.
Yeah, Darius is a great character guy. You're talking about a guy who has immense talent, who can play, who's having a great season. And like you said, it just shows his selflessness. I actually spoke to him about it, and he was excited. He was like, man, we're going to have another guy who can create. It takes a lot of pressure off for me. It allows me to also play off ball some, to give defenses a different look. He understands that the team can be more dangerous with two creators, and it will allow him to show some of his scoring ability because he has that. Oftentimes, I was on him last year about shooting more, looking for his shot. And I think this year he's found that perfect balance of scoring and creating. And Perret allows him to free himself up more sometimes and to give a different look. But, I think, anytime you have a good character guy who's talented, who works hard, the sky's the limit. And He took off last year at Lokomotiv Kuban, and didn't miss a beat. Was the best point guard in the Euro Cup. I said it countless times. I had the best point guard and I had the best 5-man. And I repeated, I harped on those two guys all year, and people thought I was probably just hyping them up because they were teammates of mine. I've had lots of teammates over 13 years. I was telling you and everyone else that these two players were different, and I'm happy that everyone's getting to see, that Darius Thompson is that player. He's elite, and he's going to be in the EuroLeague for many, many years, unless, who knows, down the line, NBA might try to steal him. He's a guard who's athletic, he has size, but, I think he's a guy who will play in the league, in EuroLeague for many years, make lots of money, and be one of the best point guards, for the future.
You mentioned that other guy, and the funny fact is that both Darius and both John Motley, they both tie for the 11th place by the efficiency in the EuroLeague. How happy you are about John Motley and him playing in Fener?
Oh, man, I'm ecstatic for him. This is a guy who's a huge talent. He can do pretty much everything on the court. Offensively, he can play the short roll. He can play back to basket. He's strong. He can dribble. He's agile. He can move. And he can shoot that mid-range shot. And he's a decent three-point shooter. So, just to see those things translate. And I try to tell people that, skill level, it's something that translates at every level. Doesn't matter, NBA, Euro Cup, Champions League, domestic leagues, EuroLeague. If you have skills, it's going to always show. Now, okay, if you're just more athletic, if you're just bigger, stronger than people, sometimes you will have struggles when you play against people who match that. But, with Jonathan Motley, he's a guy who's going to be probably the most physical, one of the most athletically blessed, strong, tough, but he's also very skilled. And you'll see him when he pushes the ball, when he faces up the big man. I mean, I think just watching his performance, his efficiency, how he's able to, to play with Scotty, to play with Nick, how he's not the focal point offense, but he finds a way to impact it night in and night out. And I think you're going to start to see more play calls, more post-ups, more times where he's bringing the ball up the court, where you're going to start to see a two to, give him a little bit more, freedom, and he's earning it. And he's slowly gaining the trust of the coaches and the staff. And, he's looking like one of the best 5-men in the EuroLeague to me. I got Walter Tavares and him. They're two different type of bigs, but there's not too many big men I'm taking over Jonathan Motley.
Yeah, it's incredible that Jonathan Motley is a EuroLeague rookie, and he leads Fenerbahce in points, in rebounds, in efficiency, and is one of the best EuroLeague players already on a team which co-leads the EuroLeague after 6 rounds. But actually, watching Motley, it still feels like he has so much room to improve. Because sometimes, I remember him in Euro Cup just dunking every ball when he was in the paint, when, he was in the reach to touch the rim with the ball. He was just dunking all those balls. So sometimes it looks like he's still hesitating to be more aggressive under the boards, to be more aggressive with his dunk selection. So instead of going for a layup, which sometimes might not convert into points, although he's making 68% of 2-pointers, it still feels like he can be more confident with his let's say shot selection. And also, he has this issue which he had previously already. He's getting into foul trouble too early sometimes, and specifically it was the last game against Barcelona. I think he had this problem, and it's something which hurts him, because he's playing only 22 minutes per game, providing all those great numbers. But when he will adjust, when he will understand the level of physicality, what is allowed and what is not, I think that he will be better in this department.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, that's an area he can improve upon, just being available for your team. He's done everything, rebounding, scoring, creating some things. I seen him grow as a passer, reading a double team, making some of those looks, some of those reads, some of those things that he wasn't necessarily doing last year. I'm starting to see that, and that's good, because that means he's working and he's continuing to learn. But he has to understand the physicality and what the refs allow and don't allow. And I think, that could be the difference in the game. That might have been, what hurt him in that Barcelona game. He was excellent, but he was battling that foul trouble. And when you're without that, that offensive engine in the paint, that guy that kind of opens everything up. Scotty's getting free for a lot of 3-point shots because, when Motley rolls, he's shooting 70%. He's dunking, he's finishing, he's patient, he's pivoting, he's pump faking. it's going to make those guys on the wing have to help a little bit more. Nick's getting a lot of freedom coming down that lane. Like, he's opening everything up. So those foul trouble problems that he's receiving, it doesn't just take away from his statistics. It really hurts the Fenerbahce team, because now the role threat is not the same. When Motley's in there, Trinchieri's a really good player, but he's not the same offensive caliber as Motley. And I think that's what you're seeing the difference in. So once he figures that out, when to be aggressive, when to not, kind of, fill out the beginning of the game, see how the refs are calling it. I think you'll see him, take even bigger leap and, be more aggressive. And I think that hesitation you're sensing is, when you have a couple fouls, you're trying to avoid, some charges. You're trying to avoid, those easy little flop call, something. So I think that's what's deterring some of his decision making when he's in foul trouble at portions of the game.
You also faced Fenerbahce with Karşıyaka, and watching them being unbeaten after 5 rounds. Of course, they lost to Barcelona, but before they were a single unbeaten team in the EuroLeague. How do you feel about their title chances? I know it's too early to talk. I know that, still a lot of great teams that are missing their star players who are injured. Fener is also missing Nemanja Bjelica. So it's just, we cannot overreact at this point of the season in November, but just looking at the big picture, looking at Fener's ceiling, how new players are adjusting. What are your feelings about this team and their chances this year?
They're really good. They're big, they're strong, they're physical. They don't just have good big men. They have good wings who have size. So you think about it, everybody is like a piece to the puzzle. So Motley, Booker, Trinchieri, to me, that's the best 3 big men in the EuroLeague, that rotation. You have Booker, who can shoot the 3, who's a lob threat in the pick and roll, who can switch out and guard guards, 1 through 5. Motley can also switch out guards, play the short roll, play the under screens, over screens. He can do all those type of reads off of Nick or off of Scotty. And then you go with Trinchieri, another great screener, good and shortcut, underrated mid-range shooter. So like those 3 kind of, are the perfect package of different type of bigs who can give Fenerbahce many different looks. And when you have that luxury of playing Booker and Motley together, that size, that rebound, and that defensive versatility, it makes you special. And then you slide to the wings. Nigel Hayes is, he has size. He can guard many positions. He plays his role, spot up shooter, close out attack guy. But he also can post up a lot of those smaller guards when teams try to play small. They try to go with those extra creators. And obviously, Nick is back to his form. And I think he never left. I think now the freedom's just there. We talked about that, being able to create. He's shooting the 3. I mean, really good right now. He only shot 17 attempts, but he's shooting 53%. He looks confident. He looks comfortable.
He told that he improved. I remember that he had one of these early interviews during the season, and he said, "Believe me, I really improved my shooting." So sample size is small, but we already see some results of that summer work.
Yeah. You can tell like his spot up shot, it looks confident. And then now I think because of Nick being there, Scotty can be himself. He can focus on scoring. He doesn't have to focus on creating or running the team. He can be that elite shooter that he is and be in attack mode all game. And that's when you're seeing him at his best. So you combine all that. And then Marko Guduric is, a good balance, taller guard. He can play the pick and roll. He can shoot. He has good pace. He's poised. I really like what they have. And, Carson Edwards, he's kind of like their bomb off the bench. There's going to be some games where he's not going to score much. The minutes are sporadic. He's still adjusting to Europe. Sometimes he gets too deep in the paint. He's always looking to finish. I think once he starts to adjust, knowing like, okay, I have to use the floater, I have to use the pull up, or I have to show that I'm a creator too, so that all this help doesn't come to me. Once he realizes that, you're going to see his game take over. But right now he's in finishing mode, and he's always trying to finish. And he's good at it sometimes. You're going to see like he's an explosive shooter. He can do things. But until he finds that balance of, when to pull up, when to create for his teammates, his game will be inconsistent. But I think he's a really talented player, and it's just an adjustment period. But they have everything. I mean, the roster is so good right now. I almost feel like if Lisa comes back, he's kind of going to kind of mess it up. Not that he's not a great player in his own right, just because now where do you find 20 minutes for him? Like who gets less minutes? Where do you find his touches, his role? He's a key player. Like he's going to want the ball. He's going to want to play some pick and roll, like, how do you fit him in? Like, I mean, I guess it's a great problem to have if you're a Tudis, but you almost have too many weapons, So I don't know. I'm very curious to see how he's going to swing this, how he's going to keep these guys happy. Remember, in domestic league, only 5 players can play in the Turkish league. So that means every night you're going to have 5 guys sitting out. Will they maintain the rhythm? Will they stay in shape? Will guys be mature? All these questions are things that, we'll see as the season progresses, because a lot of guys, don't want to sit out. A lot of guys get upset. A lot of guys, lose focus. You're in Istanbul. It's a great city. It's a lot to do. There's many distractions. When you're not playing in Turkish league game, are you going to be professional? So I think that's what we're going to see.
But wait, did I hear it right? You said that Motley, Booker, and Trinchieri, Fener has the best front line in the EuroLeague? Or
yeah, I think so.
Selection in the center position?
In the center position. Just because,
okay.
everything, the best fives, I think they have. Trinchieri, he's big. He's tough on the switch. Motley,
let's say
Booker, they're both tough on the
most versatile, right?
Yeah, they're so versatile. When we play them, they put Motley and Booker on me at points in the game because they didn't like the matchups with the guards. And so they would put them on me. So anytime we ran pick and roll, then it was a switch. And it's not really a difference. Booker's guarding me, switch, Motley's guarding me. Those are two big, strong, fast, athletic guys. So it's not easy to shoot over these taller guys. But these are just, how many bigs can do that? Can go guard the one, press the ball full court, and be in a position and quick enough to guard that. Not many can do that. So when you talk about that defensive versatility, that's what I'm talking about. And then when you talk about the ability to score on the inside and out, and I don't think there's many fives that match that that Fener brings.
Yeah, because I just thought that was a big statement, because for example, we have Real Madrid with Tavares, Vincent Poirier, Peter Corneli also adjusting to the EuroLeague and had some nice tools. Of course, if it goes broader with the front line, Barca has Vesely, Mirotic, and Shanli, for example, or Mike Toby. But yeah, if we're talking just about center position, Itudis should like what he have as his tools to execute in this position, to execute all his ideas. You mentioned distractions in Istanbul. Just in this book of Lamar Odom's book, there was a story that sometimes, Istanbul is really a place where there are too many distractions, because even in 2004, when Team USA had some unprecedented amount of security guards around them, because it was a first big tournament after 9/11 attack. I think it was a big first tournament for the Team USA, and they had a lot of stars like Allen Iverson, Steph Marbury, Tim Duncan on the team, a lot of great players on that team. So there was a huge security around these guys, and Allen Iverson was, let's say, protagonist of taking most of the team out of well-secured team hotel to one of the Istanbul nightclubs. I think that nightclub was owned by Mehmet Okur, but somehow there were some paparazzis. They found them out, and security guards came to the nightclub to get all the players back to the hotel safely. So yeah, Istanbul has some distractions. Okay, we kind of expanded on our first selection of biggest surprises. Just to make clear, we had Baskonia as number one for you and for me as well. What's your second pick?
For me, is Monaco. I always thought they had a good roster. I always thought there was extreme talent there. But you have to think, Elie Okobo misses basically the entire preseason, the entire training camp, because he's with the national team. Then you throw in a mix that, there were question marks. Can Mike James, can Jordan Lloyd, can Elie Okobo, can they all play together? Are there enough basketballs? And, I'm seeing, them playing well together. I'm seeing them sharing the ball. I'm seeing them looking happy, like they're enjoying it. And so that's the thing. Like, a lot of guys are talented, but when you see guys who are happy to play with one another, and Jordan Lloyd is a guy who can play with anybody. I could tell just because, he can play defense. He's been in different roles. He's been a guy that was underused in Valencia, but when called upon, he could score the ball. He's a guy that when he went to Red Star had a bigger role, showed his ability to score the ball, to put in the hole, showed that he can really light it up. Then he went to Zenit, and it kind of was like in the middle where he had to be defensive minded. He had to play Javi Pascal's system. He still had to score. They had so many point guard issues. Sometimes he was asked to be point guard to facilitate the score. So you just saw his versatility of a guy who can adjust to many different situations in different roles within the team. So I didn't worry about him. And I knew Mike was going to be alpha. Like, Mike James is just special. Like, he's one of the most talented players in Europe. I was wondering how Elie Okobo would fit. And, to my surprise, he's been excellent. I always thought that the talent was there. I just wasn't sure how the fit would be. And, I think he's scoring about 12 points a game. He's been efficient. He's been aggressive. The coach is doing good with the minutes, getting 24 a night. Jordan Lloyd getting 27 a night and Mike getting 32 a night. And, Kobo is shooting 58% from three, 50 from twos, and 90 from the free throw line. So, I mean, you can't ask for much more than that. And, he's done his job. They have 4 double-figure scores. They've been good on defense. It's just a team that, is athletic, has some marquee wins, have gone on the road, shown their ability to win in hostile atmosphere, and also shown the ability to protect the home court. So, I really like what I see from them. I'm just surprised that with so many new pieces and players that they mesh so quickly together. And that to me is surprising because, yes, people would say they're a borderline playoff team this summer, but no one would have them as a top 4 team in the EuroLeague, and that's what they're looking like.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the best part of Monaco is that they still has such a big room for improvement. We already discussed, everybody's focused on this big three of Monaco with James, Okobo, and Lloyd. And without all these good things that Lloyd can offer, both on and off the court, I mean, he still can be much better at shooting the ball. Probably he was also affected by this back injury he had early in the season. He's making only 31% of 3-pointers, 42 of 2-pointers, and we know for sure that he can be better with that. And also a lot of goes with Monaco's, I would call them assets. I mean, I think the main thing for Monaco was to find chemistry between those 3 guys at first. Because they are decision makers on the court. The team, the whole season is on their shoulders. Now, I think the next step for them would be to find those other guys. For example, you can always use Donatas Motiejunas inside the paint better. He's very efficient and at scoring in the paint at some stretches. Of course, you can switch him on the court all the time if Donta Hall, for example, to split them for 20 minutes. One can offer some great defense and Donatas Motiejunas can offer some great offense. Then we have John Brown, who also had some time to adjust. We already saw some great moments, especially in the game against Olympiacos when it mattered to get that revenge for the playoffs. Both Okobo made a big statement, scoring 23 points. Both John Brown made a big statement, making some crucial defensive stops. And I mean, you can see players like Adrian Moerman scoring 5 points in 21 minutes and shooting the ball very bad, I would say, 15% 2-point shooting and 32% 3-point shooter. He can be much better than that. Jaron Blossomgame, 3 points per game on 11% 3-point shooting. I mean, we're talking about a lot of potential still left on this team, which is already very solid. So that's the scary part about this Monaco team so far. Yeah, and I didn't take them in my top surprises because I kind of already admired them a lot in our previous podcast. But for my second selection, first I was, my first pick was Baskonia, rookies, the entire team. My second biggest surprise is just the standings in general. I mean, who would have thought that Alba Berlin, even Maccabi, with Wade Baldwin, with Lorenzo Brown, with a lot of new players, Baskonia especially, who thought that they're going to be in top 8? Baskonia is the third seeded team right now. Alba was on the top for a few rounds. I mean, it's great to see these teams blossoming, having some unexpected results, unexpected wins. And for the second part of the surprises, that we have these final 4 teams, let's say in the bottom of the standings. Virtus Bologna, 2 wins in 6 games. Efes, 2 wins in 6 games. Even Real Madrid is very unconvincing with 3 wins. Milan, 3 wins. That's the worst start since Ettore Messina took the team. And I'm not overreacting. It's the beginning of the November. So as, for example, Šarūnas Jasikevičius once said when he was the head coach of Žalgiris that he starts looking at standings only when January or February kicks in. Because in this new EuroLeague format, it doesn't really much what's happening. But it's easier to be said than done. And sometimes teams are overreacting, especially teams which are run by big owners or by big organizations. So I'm just curious to see who's going to overreact. And we already hear these rumors about Real Madrid and their head coach, Chus Mateo, being on a hot seat. I don't see any, let's say, overreactions in Milan unless they're gonna bring some player just from overreaction. Maybe that's what they did last season with some injuries they had. FS, they're not going to overreact. I mean, they went through it for the last 2 seasons and they won the EuroLeague back-to-back. Of course, they made the signing Isaiah Taylor, but probably that was just a needed and logical step looking at their roster depth. But just in general, this picture of the standings, of some interesting games, of some interesting outcomes, it's quite surprising, and it tells a lot about the EuroLeague, and that you cannot expect for any easy game, no matter who you play, basically.
Yeah, it's very balanced. You can lose anybody any night. You like the talent. The games have been extremely competitive. It's been good basketball. I think it's exactly what the EuroLeague wants, and what the fans want to see.
Your third selection,
and this was a tough one, the third one, because you're trying to see what's the fit, what's the problem, and for me, I would basically say, I thought that Partizan would struggle, so they're my surprise, because after not having a clear point guard, trying things, not making, maybe the necessary moves, for positions of need, I will say. I think they have some good players, but, anytime you just don't have an experienced point guard, or you don't have a point guard who is their natural position, who's a good pick and roll player, who's a creator, who makes the game easier for everybody, you think the season's going to be a disaster. So then they start off 0-3, and I'm like, yeah, this is what I expected. It's going to be a rough year. I don't know how Brovich is going to handle this. Like, he's a great coach, but they just need a point guard. And I still feel they need a point guard. But, when you're playing in Serbia, those fans are passionate. That gym is packed, the media, everything. And then you're playing for a demanding coach who expects excellence. The pressure is immense. And to see them turn around and win 3 straight games after starting 0-3, to me, that's a surprise. Extremely impressive, because a lot of young teams, which is what Partizan has, a lot of younger guys, a lot of younger players, when you face adversity, when you face stress, a lot of times you fold. A lot of times the losses pile up. People start to get down on themselves. People start to lose confidence. But, they figured their way out. And, like some of those losses, surprising. First game, 100 put on you, at Alba. Then you go to Baskonia, you lose again, another 103 points put on you. So now you're thinking, okay, they don't have their point guard play, but there's a problem defensively. And then, they figure it out, they kind of adjust, and they regroup. And they show that, maybe they're not dead yet. And so to me, just seeing their growth, seeing them, maybe they're figuring it out. Maybe they can be like Zenit was, last year, and, they can win in spite of their point guard play. And that's what it's looking like these last 3 games. And the first 3 games, it was looking hopeless. I'm not going to lie to you.
Oh yeah, that's true. And I had the same feeling about them, and mainly because of their point guard selection. But one of the biggest surprises, actually, talking about Partizan, is that they have the best offensive rating in the EuroLeague, according to Beebalytics, and that's just incredible. I mean, without a, let's say, solid choice on the point guard position, because they play a lot of minutes with Yamadar, they also play a lot of minutes with Dante Exum. Kevin Punter sometimes kind of, takes that ball handler role. James Nunnally is here also. I mean, it's a different type of team, and I was also surprised why they didn't make a bold move with the point guard position, because there were a lot of rumors already during the summer. So this of course, stats sometimes they also might be misleading, but the fact that they have the best offensive rating in the EuroLeague is something incredible. Of course, thanks to very good shooting percentages. They're first in the EuroLeague by 3-point shooting, 43% per game. They have the best true shooting percentage. They're third in offensive rebound percentage, which helps to get some second chances. So, and what's interesting, they're 17th in assists, which is very big contrast. I mean, you rarely see the best offensive rating for a team which has the second worst assist average in the EuroLeague. So this team is very unexpected, unpredictable team. You never know who they might lose, and you might expect them winning against every team. So with some roster adjustments throughout the season, they might be even better. And what do you think? What kind of point guard they would need? I don't know right now who's available on the market, but let's say just make a picture of the profile of the player, or to compare. Maybe there's that point guard who's playing for the other EuroLeague team, just to give a picture of that type of player.
So they need a guy who's tough-minded, because Abramovich is extremely tough on his point guard. You know, you got to be the floor general out there. You need a guy with the experience who can handle, the pressures that come with leading, a heavy fan-based team like Partizan. You need a guy who can play pick and roll, who can create, who can hit big shots when called upon, but who can also, run a team, manage, and, isn't hunting baskets. I think that the perfect profile for them is Malcolm Delaney. He's a guy that can defend. He has the experience. He can create in the pick and roll. He can shoot. And I understand that he has a good relationship with Kevin Punter. So I think, based on who's available, when you're looking for an experienced player, someone that you can plug in and he can fit, he's a guy that he can come to Partizan right now and, probably give them that spark they need, maybe 10 to 12 points a game, 4 to 6 assists, and he's strong defensively. So, I think, that's something that they can look at. Other than that, it's probably difficult to get somebody who hasn't played at this level, or hasn't played at your level, and to go buy him out or go get somebody like that. That wouldn't be a route I would take, just because like playing point guard, at that level, with that pressure, with that, the fan base who wants to win now, they don't care. They have Abramovich, they have that fan support, they have that Serbian history, that pride. They don't care about the team budget. They don't care about none of that. They want to win, and they want to be a playoff team. So I think you need to get somebody who understands, the history of, European basketball and the expectation that's ahead, and who's unbothered by it, who's unfazed.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I didn't think about Malcolm, because last season when his contract with Milan was expiring, in one of the interviews on BasketNews, he mentioned that he will return to Europe only if he will be able to play half of the season, for example, because the season in Europe is just too long. It's really exhausting, and he doesn't feel if he needs that at this point of his career. And him joining Partizan in January, for example, for Partizan trying to survive until January, and so far they're doing pretty good, and they should be just better from now on. That would be a huge upgrade, I think. That's an interesting point you're coming up with, Errick. Yeah, and actually one of my third surprise of the season is also related to Partizan, is the Partizan center, which I think was also very important behind their success. This is Matthias Lezort. And Lezort is interesting guy. I mean, I think that Partizan is the second team, I'm sorry, where he stayed for another year, because he was just changing teams. He played for EuroLeague teams. He played for Maccabi last year. He played in Monaco, in Eurocup, in Unicaja Malaga, in Red Star, but just in some short stretches. And from what I heard, okay, I will try from positives. I mean, he is the second most efficient player in the EuroLeague right now. He also leads the EuroLeague in offensive rebounds by a mile. He's grabbing more than 5 offensive rebounds per game. He ties for the first place in blocked shots, I think, with Chris Komadje. And as I mentioned, he's second in player efficiency rating, just behind Sasha Vezenkov. And the biggest impact, I mean, the stats show, and I think my eye test also shows that what kind of impact he makes on the court. And numbers are just crazy. With him on the court, Partizan's rebounding increases by 15%. Partizan's defense improves by 7.5 points per 100 possessions when he's on the court. And the offense also improves per 19 points per 100 possessions when he's on the floor. It's also related to the fact that Partizan doesn't have a solid backup. Balša Koprivica or Tristan Vukcevic, they're just too young and they're not ready yet to contribute on that level. And I mean, Lezort is playing hell of a minutes, 34 per game. So it really helps him to get all those crazy numbers. But watching Partizan play, I think that his physicality, the way how humble he is in the paint, it really changed some games. For example, for instance, there was the Žalgiris game, and Žalgiris was the best offensive rebounding team in the EuroLeague before going to Belgrade. Partizan, and thanks to Matthias Lezort, of course, they limited them to only 9 offensive rebounds in the game, which helped them to win the game because it was one of the main strengths of Žalgiris. And he's changing the game with his blocks, with his rebounding, with just his presence inside the paint. And I remember, I was kind of digging in about this player before he decided to stay in Partizan, and few of the main question marks was that he was not, let's say, the smartest player on the court in terms of decision making, because he has so much energy that sometimes he cannot control it, and he sometimes he's wrong with some decisions on the court, and that's how other opponents, they're taking this advantage. And also the other big factor was that I was told that by some basketball people that he cannot play low minutes. He needs to be on the court for long stretches, for long minutes, to be productive, to feel the rhythm, to feel the momentum of the game, and to be efficient for the team. That's what we see so far in Partizan, and I think that he's a big impact maker for this team so far. I'm not saying that they are very successful, but I'm just saying that he's important part of this situation, and them, of course, being the first in offensive rating.
I agree. He's been a beast. His energy, his effort, his toughness, is something that the crowd feeds off of. His teammates do as well. He's a really good player, and I think most players obviously they're going to be more productive with more minutes, but I think this is the first time we're actually seeing him get a full opportunity, as being the first 5-man, and he's taking full advantage. He looks excellent out there, dunking on people, spin moves, post up, driving the hole, everything. From his head's defense, his recovery, he's doing it all for them, and they have nobody behind him. So hopefully he just has to stay healthy. And I think he has the motor. He has the ability to continue to play, with this energy, with this effort, even at 30 plus minutes a game for the course of the season, because he's just, that type of guy. They say playing hard is a skill, and it is. A lot of people don't have a motor, don't have that effort, energy to bring it every play, and that's a skill. And that's why a lot of people, get paid what they do, because they can bring that skill that no one else can.
Okay, enough with positives. Let's go with disappointments after 6 rounds. Errick McCollum, what's your biggest disappointments early into the season?
And, this is tough. This is tough because it's so early, and, teams could turn it around. I would say one of my biggest disappointments, I think, I don't want to say that's finished for them or nothing, but I would say Bologna. I just expected, more, like a better brand of basketball, them to be more cohesive as a unit. They bring a lot of guys back, that played together, for 2 years on that Euro Cup team. And I just expected them to hit the ground running a little quicker. It just seems stagnant. They scored 62 points in Partizan. It's a tough place to play, but, when you have all these offensive weapons, Tadosic, Jordan Mickey, you have these talented guys, you just think 62 points, okay, you can lose the game, but you expect more than this. Now, part of that might have been because, Shingelia was hurt, he was out, but, with a team with this deep of a roster, with this big of a budget, but, so many experienced players, you expect kind of the next man up approach. And, if one guy can get hurt and he's not even a guard, and it can kind of throw the trajectory of your team off like this, it's scary. It's different. When a guard, when Shane Larkin gets hurt, yes, he has the ball a lot. He creates, he makes the game easier for everybody. But when a big man gets hurt, usually you can pick and plug, which basically means you can just plug somebody else in, and you can kind of keep the engine going. Maybe you're not the same team, but you just stay afloat. You keep your head above water. And I think they struggled last year in the Euro Cup, and then, they got fortunate with some matchups with some key teams losing, with, teams getting kicked out the Euro Cup. I think that kind of helped them. But just not seeing, that brand of basketball that you would expect from a team of this caliber with this type of experience.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I completely agree with you. They're 17th by the offensive rating. They're not... when I have a free evening, when I pick a basketball game to watch, I try to avoid Bologna, Virtus, because they're not playing let's say they're not playing sexy basketball on this tough EuroLeague schedule when we have so many games clashing each other. So usually try to avoid Bologna because it feels like they're so far away from being, first and foremost, being a squad, being a real team. And maybe that's what also impacts their offense because, as I mentioned, they have talent offensively. They have one of the best passers in Europe, Milos Teodosic. They have Ife Lundberg, for example, some other guys, some other assets. But it seems like that they still didn't find their roles. Sergio Scariolo just coming back straight from the Eurobasket, missing all the preparation. He will need time to settle these roles down, to find best lineups after all those changes. I just hope that Toko Shengelia return will help them. For example, starting from Jordan Mickey, he can benefit a lot from this comeback. And for sure, time is their biggest friend. But yeah, so far, a lot of disappointing things had happened, including this loss against Asvel Villeurbanne, for example. Some crazy results so far, some unexpected losses, including that one in Kaunas, where they kind of had that game in the pocket already. So yeah, it's probably a tough time for Virtus fan base, but of course, it also comes to some of their previous decisions. For example, when they signed Milos Teodosic and Marco Bellinelli, that was a big move for them to win the Eurocup at first, to get to the EuroLeague, and also, to improve their situation in Italian Championship. And they won the Italian League 2 seasons ago. They won the Eurocup. They achieved their goals. But now, since guys like Teodosic and Bellinelli were on the long-term contracts, now they're 2 of the 3 most best paid players in Virtus Bologna, and they're really old. You can see that they're dead. Their legs are dead. In the best case scenario, they're backups on your team. But this is the price they have to pay right now, just for that goal to make it back to the EuroLeague. So yeah, we'll see how this team will look like after a couple of months, when Sergio Scariolo will have more time for some adjustments. Yeah, and for my top disappointment of the season, I have another historical club. It's Real Madrid. A lot, and I think that a lot of goes on their sports director, the man who runs sports decisions, basketball decisions, Juan Carlos Sanchez, because the first bad move he made was firing head coach Pablo Lasso. I mean, I think that he was just doing a wonderful job in the club for 11 years, and the problem was that the GM, the sports director, he never got along with Lasso. And there is a joke around Real Madrid organization that the GM was looking for a reason to fire Pablo Lasso for 11 years. The problem was that Pablo Lasso just kept winning. And he made this, he forced that move, because if you remember that story, the main reason why they decided to part ways with Lasso was that he wasn't good, from the medical perspective. He had this, he had stroke, if I'm correct with the word. He had big heart issues, and they said that he cannot return to the bench to coach the team, although the coach came with medical reports that said he was good to go. He was good to work again after a couple of months since that situation had occurred. So they fired Pablo Lasso. They picked his assistant coach, Chus Mateo. They brought some players that Pablo Lasso wasn't a big fan of. And it seems like this team is not clicking, starting from the head coach and then going to the roster. Watching Real Madrid, I just still don't understand what's their identity. Because, for example, with Luka Doncic, with Facundo Campazzo, with Sergio Llull at his prime, this was offensive-oriented team. One of the teams to, it was one of the biggest pleasure to watch this team play in the EuroLeague. When Luka Doncic left, when Campazzo left, Pablo Lasso made a huge turnaround. From one of the best offensive teams, he made Real Madrid one of the best defensive teams. And he achieved a lot through defense. Now, watching Real Madrid play, I still don't get what this team is all about. They're playing at home, Virtus Bologna. We already discussed that this is a very inconvincing team so far. They're allowing them 95 points. They're playing Olympiacos. They're losing to Olympiacos, of course. Very solid team, but they're allowing them to score 89 points. And you're playing at home. I remember that with Pablo Lasso, I mean, maybe they were like once or twice it had happened that, they couldn't do anything defensively. Now we're just 6 games into the season and we had these 2 bad-looking losses defensive-wise. So I think that Real Madrid has issues. They lost to Zaragoza in the Spanish Championship. This was the team that was winless in the beginning of the season. They're losing to teams like Virtus Bologna, Olympiacos. They barely won against Panathinaikos. Some other clubs. They got close to Barcelona just because some crazy ending of the game. But other than that, it was a easy win for Barca. So, I mean, I understand that they still need a lot of time, but I think that this is the organization. Just like in the beginning of the podcast, I remembered about some teams overreacting. I think that Real Madrid might overreact, and there are already reports that Chus Mateo is on a hot seat and that Real Madrid is just exploring coaching market. That report in Spanish media was also confirmed by my sources. It's not clear yet if they will do a head coaching move, but there is a strong belief around the organization that they might change the head coach in some part of the season if the situation won't get better. So if that will be decision, that just will prove that decision to fire the head coach Pablo Lasso was a big mistake. It kind of felt like a big mistake already because players were unhappy too. Some of them expressed their disappointments on Twitter, for example, which is really rare on that level, on talking about these type of players. So I don't know. For me, it feels like Real Madrid is just a team which, the train is going off the track, and at some point of the season, they're just gonna crash. So maybe I'm dead wrong. Because it's too early to make some observations like that.
Yeah, Real Madrid was actually my second choice for disappointment. So I mean, you kind of hit everything on the head. Especially a team that has like a dominant front line like that. When you have Tavares, you Poirier, you throw in Vivicelli, like these are really good guys in the 5 and the 4 position. And I think you add somebody like a Hazonia, somebody like Musa, and you see the potential that this team should have. They're scoring 79 points in Europe, and I think it's just consistency at the point guard position. Sergio Llull right now is not in a good rhythm. He's shooting 25% from twos, 21% from threes. They're getting 4 points and 3 assists from him in 20 minutes. And I think they need a little bit more. I know he's getting older. I know he's facing injuries, but they need more. If not, maybe I think Sergio Rodriguez could get more minutes. He's only playing 14 minutes a night. He's a guy who's good in the pick and roll. He can find passes. Okay, he doesn't bring that defensive grunt and mentality of a Lou, but he's someone that can kind of give this offense life. Like they need somebody to kind of organize it, get it all going. Right now, they're just a group of individuals. And considering that you've had this same team for a long time, I know the coach has changed, but you've had the same core guys. Yabusele was there. Walter Tavares, Vincent Poirier, like these guys were there. Sergio Llull was there. Rodriguez is a new addition, but he has that Real Madrid blood. He's been there, he's for many years, even though he had left, went away, like he knows, how to play with these guys. And it's just, you would have expected a better transition. Even though you get rid of a coach, when you keep a transition, the fact that you have not seen it means it just shows you how valuable Pablo Lasso was and the job he did, and I think Real Madrid has been a disappointment, and until that point guard play picks up, I think firing a coach is probably like the next worst thing you can do, just because now there's going to be even more instability. There's going to be no consistency. Now you're going to have guys who already are trying to find an identity within offense, within themselves, within the role of the team.
I'll just go with my for selection since we both had Real Madrid. I will expand on with some other teams which also disappointed me, but there was some other thing which doesn't involve players or teams which kind of got me disappointed. And let's start that I was very harsh with I was very harsh towards officiating in the Eurobasket during the Eurobasket competition. So I cannot ignore some crucial mistakes that so far happened in the EuroLeague. And I think if you remember, especially in the last round, there were some very questionable calls starting from the game between Olympiacos and Valencia. The last block, let's say LU block, it was by Webb, if I'm right, was clean. Everything was okay, but I think when Kostas Lukas was making that late jumper, I think that Victor Claver just touched his hand, and it was pretty obvious. And I think that was a big missed call because Olympiacos was down by one. So Slukas is a really good free throw shooter, although he missed two. Surprisingly, because he was like 30 of 31 before that game. I think that he could have won that game for Olympiacos. You probably remember how Panathinaikos owner Dimitris Giannakopoulos was mad and he blamed the EuroLeague for the for the officials continuously doing a bad job, especially in Panathinaikos games. I don't fully agree with it, but what I saw in the game against Partizan, I was also not very pleased. I saw a lot of uncalled travels in the end of the game by Partizan bigs. There was this big moment when Dwayne Bacon tried to dunk the ball. I think that over Dante Exum, and there was no foul call, although it was pretty obvious contact above the rim. And there were some more situations which I think that, okay, let's start that. I think that Panathinaikos lost the game not because of the officials. They lost the game before the main crucial mistakes had occurred, but it still had some impact. And it also goes to other rounds. I don't know if you remember well, there was this Asvel Valencia game where Harper had this offensive foul when he kicked in the defender's leg. I think that the result was tie, and Valencia was about to try to win the game, and somehow from the offensive possession, you ended up getting two free throws. I mean, okay, maybe it's not the problem of the officiating. I think that it was pretty okay call. In my eyes, he kicked into the leg. But the problem is the ruling, the rule that allows to score for the defensive team. And the worst part was that before, I think that there was a shot clock violation, although Nando De Colo, just a possession before he hit the rim with his shot. Of course, you needed the replay to make sure if that ball hit the rim, and refs did a replay. The worst part was that they took a bad angle and they gave the ball to Valencia, which was absolutely ridiculous. There were some other situations, like Micic got fouled when he was playing against Monaco, and EuroLeague acknowledged the mistake they did in the end of the fourth quarter. It was one of the crucial plays. Real Madrid Virtus game, they added 1 point to Madrid by a mistake. Some other situations, for example, Žalgiris Partizan games, in my eyes, we discussed these plays a lot in the Lithuanian podcast. There were a lot of questionable calls against Žalgiris. I mean, and we're talking about 6 rounds. I think it's just too many situations where with questionable referees calls. I hate to talk about referees. Usually I'm on that team which says that you lost the game before, even if we are talking about some crucial play, crucial possession and some uncalled situations. But since I've been very harsh about the Eurobasket officials, and since EuroLeague has their own referees because they're not allowed to officiate in the Eurobasket, I had to be, fair for both sides and to say that, hey, EuroLeague refs can also step up to match the EuroLeague players' level on the court. Yeah, probably you didn't have that point. You didn't have that pick on your selection, so you can continue with the last one, probably, right?
Yes, the last one.
Virtus, Madrid, and your last disappointment of this early of the season.
The Harper, I think what you said. I mean, those were some great points. I watched that game when Harper kicked the guy on a 3-point shot, and I just feel like it should have been treated as an offensive foul, loss of possession. Asvel gets the ball out of bounds, and 1 point whatever on the clock. Like, treat it like a charge. Like, to get points off of this is cheap, and it just doesn't make sense because it's an offensive foul. He kicked it. The offensive player had the ball. You don't deserve free throws in this. So, like, I seen that. I seen the Mises call that was missed. He came under the shooter, landed on his foot. I mean, you brought up a lot of good, interesting points, and for sure, Lucas shot clear foul, clear. Like he went up, you can see the hand. Anytime a player goes here and then shows the hand, it's usually a dead giveaway, but you can literally see the trajectory change. The DeColo shot, you could see the ball. Like, so when you're watching, if you see the ball hit the rim, it always changes its rotational path. And so just watch the ball. Once it changes spin, like, it hit the rim. Like, you've been playing basketball long enough, or you've been reffing games long enough. These are clear tells. So, I mean, you make some excellent points. And, I have to agree with those. My third choice, I wasn't thinking about the rest, but I mean, I almost want to switch it now. But my third choice is not that a team is it's a disappointment, not because I expected much of them. It's just because it's always a team that overachieve. Always a team that everyone underestimates. I always underestimated them. When I seen the roster, when I seen everything, I'm like, oh, they're not going to be good. And then every year, somehow this coach has them in the playoffs, has them ready. So maybe I'm spoiled because Trinchieri has spoiled me into thinking that he always is a magician. He's going to do something with nothing or something with less. And not to say that Bayern Munich shouldn't be considered one of the top teams. They're not rosterized, but they always find a way to sneak through. So for me, I'm just surprised that they're 1-5 because they're a team that usually sneaks wins, that plays high quality basketball, and that finds a way. And I think they'll still find a way. They're figured out. They'll right the ship. But I know the roster doesn't say they're supposed to be, 5-1 or 4-2, whatever. But it's one of those teams where they just find a way to win. Like, I expected them more to be where Zalgiris is, at 3-3, or Asvel, like just finding a way to do that. And I just feel like a team that doesn't have immense talent, when you dig that hole, it's extremely difficult to get out. Even if you have, a good system, good tactics, even if you have guys who follow to what the coach's game plan is, like, it's extremely difficult to change the energy around an organization when you're starting off 1-5, and, it could only get harder. So they're a surprise just because, not because I don't think they're good, but because that Trinchieri's teams always overachieve, and right now they're not. So that's what's surprising to me.
Yeah, and they played 4 games, home games of 5. They're 1-4. Now they're 1-5. They started the season with 5 losses in a row, and of course it's kind of alarming. Yes, it's disappointing, but we can remember that they started the previous season also 0-4. Of course, partly to Russian clubs' exclusion, they managed to make the playoffs. It really helped them, to shift to the top 8. But at least there is, that sense that, okay, they're losing, but you can kind of trust the process because they proved that they are reliable, that this is a project that needs a lot of time. They had some crucial changes, I would say, of for example, Cassius Winston playing a very important role. And I just hope that they kind of they will jump off from that game against Efes. I think that it was a great team win with a lot of great performances, starting from Cassius Winston, the EuroLeague rookie, and the way how he controls the game, the potential he has in controlling the game, hitting some important shots, how sharp he sees some situations, some nice passes. I liked from what I saw. They could have been in a better situation if Nick Weiler-Bob made both of these free throws against Milan. It was a painful moment for the player, when the team was down by like 1 point. There were like 2 or 3 seconds left. Nick Weiler-Bob had 2 free throw attempts, and he missed them both. I was just happy to see that both the GM of Bayern and the sports director, they quickly approached the player after the tip, after the final whistle, to support the player, to kind of calm him down, to say, hey, these 2 free throws won't, determine your further career, and just don't get into that hole to get affected by these 2 free throws. Although it's a really big thing to handle for a professional, and if you're, let's say, more sensitive to those kind of things. And we're talking about a player who is not known as a big time shooter, very good defensive player. He kind of managed to become a point guard for Andrea Trinchieri team, but his outside shot was always a big question. So it's great to see him making 3-pointers by 45%. I agree with you. I mean, Bayern Munich kind of puts these expectations just because it's Andrea Trinchieri's team. They have nice roster. Wouldn't say that is the most talented team, but they look good as a team. And I fully believe again that they have this potential to work it out throughout the season and to be in a playoff race, which would be already a huge achievement for this club. Because sometimes we do this mistake. We have our own expectations, and we just think that it's a must. Now they have to make the playoffs. Although when you look at the budgets, I mean, they're in a bottom with some other teams. They're not on the top. They cannot compete for the players like Fenerbahce, Monaco, some other big clubs now, Maccabi, for example. So in their money range, they're doing a great job. But we have these kind of affected expectations, and sometimes we have to see the whole picture that the playoffs is a really big shot for this team. So I also was kind of disappointed by the result, but since I kind of trust the process, I still give them time, and I really believe that they will improve a lot, and this win against Efes will be the start of something better. Isaac Bonga, for example, he played his second, I would say first full game, and when he was healthy, when he was in his rhythm, and you could see what kind of impact he makes on the court, offensively, defensively, how great he sees the court as a kind of point guard, point forward, I would say. Rubit is injured. Otello Hunter is injured. Other players will get into their rhythm. I like the potential of this team. I really think that they're going to improve. So that's why I don't have them in my list of disappointments.
Yeah, I think they're going to be good, and I think they're going to improve, and I think they can right the ship because they've been playing good basketball, just a couple of tough losses, and I think they can be fine. I think they're playing good basketball. I was just surprised that, they lost a couple of games, tight ones, and, usually they're a team that kind of figures it out and, usually gets a couple of surprising wins, and I think it's too early. They'll be okay, but, I think it's just because I think highly of Trinchieri's coaching ability that to see them 1-5, it's just surprising, but not alarming.
Yeah, I agree. And as you just mentioned, it's so early. It's so early to get disappointed, actually. For example, I have teams like Efes, Milan on my list. What makes me a little bit disappointing about Milan that even though they brought Kevin Pangos, Brandon Davis, Billy Barron, they still struggle offensively. They have just 15th best offensive rating in the EuroLeague. If you remember the last year, they had some really big offensive issues. They were also 15th by the offensive rating in the league. In some games, they barely got more than 60 points, and including the playoff series against Efes. So I just thought that with these signings, they will get much better. Of course, a lot of Shaywan Shields got injured, and it's a very big blow to the organization because we're talking about the top 10 player in the whole EuroLeague, and he was the best scorer on that group. Unique player, unique forward in the EuroLeague. Also, Nazmi Trulong just came back after getting injury, and we're talking about two offensive threats that should improve this organization. So I'm also kind of patient, although their start, as I mentioned, is the worst in Ettore Messina era. I really believe that they will get better. Talking about Efes, for example, I'm not really surprised by their record because that's what we already witnessed in the two of the previous seasons. They also don't have Shane Larkin. They might miss him for the entire November, and it's tough. Some players might have some motivational issues, which starts with not getting back into transition defense, for example. What maybe disappoints me so far, maybe the way how they're trying to find who would finish the game. For example, there is Vasilija Micic and Will Clyburn. Maybe I just picked wrong games, but I didn't like what I saw in the end of the game against Monaco and Fener. Against Monaco, I didn't see Will Clyburn having ball enough. Although Vasilija Micic was hurt, he got injured in that play, which was later acknowledged as a mistake by the referees. He still had the ball in the extra time. He still made all those shots, although Will Clyburn was having his night. And then the game against Fenerbahce, there were some other situations where I just wanted to see ball distribution differently when I saw in the game against Fener. But these are things which will be, let's say, cleared out during the season. They will get better from that. They will improve, and this picture might be misleading so far, so early into the season. So it was, for me, it was really hard to find the third biggest disappointment. I even had the schedule. I even had the EuroLeague schedule as one of the biggest disappointments. I hate to have so many games clashing each other. And it's good to have EuroLeague TV subscription. It's good that I have as some software to download games later. But if I'm a fan, I could get really angry. And I think that the way how EuroLeague should do something about it. I know it's hard to schedule games for the entire Europe to have at least 2 full game experience per one night. And I know that a lot of behind it is because we don't have Russian teams playing in the competition. And if you remember, usually Russian teams started their games early, so that you could easily watch some other games late in Spain or Italy or in Greece, for example. Now, a lot of games are starting at the same time, and it's really hard to watch more than one game per one evening. I just think that it really hurts the organization, and we should follow football Champions League example, where they have at least 2 full game experiences per night. One game starts at 8 o'clock, the other game starts at 10 o'clock by Lithuanian time. So it should be the same in the EuroLeague as well, because TV rights is the one who makes the most money for the competition, and EuroLeague should take care of it. And we had this joke in our office that it seems like that Jordi Bertomeu, the former CEO of the organization, just pooped in the middle of the room and left the organization with this schedule issue, to handle for this new administration. I really don't believe that it's so easy, to ruin things. And, it's not, for sure, it's not easy to make the schedule, but EuroLeague should do something about it in the future if they want to be more profitable.
Yeah, you make some good points. I was hesitant to list Efes just because Shane's out. We know how important he is. We've seen them right the ship, and they're back-to-back champion. So I was hesitant, and then with Babal getting hurt, the guard depth just wasn't there, and they had a couple tough games. The Valencia game could have went either way. Fener on the road, finished playing strong. That's tough when you're shorthanded. So I kind of excused them, but you'd like to see someone outside of Clyburn and Misa step up. Especially in the absence of Larkin. And I think Babal was playing solid until the injury. And then Milan, it was a toss-up between them and Bayern. I was trying to decide who I wanted. Although Milan has a lot of new players, a lot of new changes. So it's tough to have that chemistry built early. I think what's really hurting them is they have a great player who's just in a slump right now. I think Devin Hall really emerged last year. I mean, he was excellent. And I think he's a great player, and I think he'll right the ship. But right now, I mean, he's playing 30 minutes a game. He's shooting 19% from twos, 11% from threes, and he's averaging a little over like 3.5 points a game in 30 minutes. So this is a guy that as a coach, you're normally expecting probably 11 to 13 points a game from. And that's a lot, when you're talking about, 10 less points per game from a guy who, is more than capable. And that's kind of slowed him down some. I know Pengos was struggling with his 3-point shot early. Seems to be, finding the rhythm now. Just a lot of good players, and you expect that they would, be towards the top half of the EuroLeague standings. And it's still early. There's plenty of time, but with Shields' injury and with Hall struggling, I could see them losing some more games, until Hall gets out of his funk, or until Shields gets back, because, if you're struggling a little bit offensively and you lose your best player, it only gets worse from there.
Yeah, and the worst problem is that it was announced that Shields is out for from 6 to 8 weeks, and then he will be reevaluated. And from what I hear, that he might be out for longer. And as you mentioned, and it really hurts the team, not just now, not just in presence, but also for the future. But because both Shields will need time to readjust, to get back to his rhythm. The team once again will have to readjust to a different roles. So it is going to be another tough season for Milan, because it seems like they have this curse of injuries following them each year. And the last advanced stat I have for this pod is that 45% of our listeners and viewers who watched our latest URBONUS episode don't subscribe our channel. So it's a must to follow BasketNews YouTube channel, to press like below this video, just to help us to grow. By the way, before the end, I have a couple of NBA questions to Errick. We have many NBA fans in our office, and they really like Pelicans and your brother CJ playing for Pels. So just give us a picture of how CJ is feeling playing alongside with Zion Williamson. We have a lot of expectations for him, to finally play, to finally avoid these injuries and finally contribute and make some, mark in the NBA with Brandon Ingram, many other players. How do you like their chances in general this season?
I really like them. I think they're a top 4 team in the West. I think that's where they'll be positioned. You're talking about someone who's basically unguardable with one person. Zion Williamson, he's big, he's strong. He scores in the paint easily. I mean, we don't see anybody in the NBA scoring the paint like Zion Williamson outside of Giannis Antetokounmpo. So, he's that type of dominant force when it comes to attacking the rim and finishing, over bigger, taller defenders. So when you add that to the mix, I think the most underrated player on that roster is Brandon Ingram. I think he's one of the top players in the NBA. I think a lot of people don't realize it just because it wasn't televised, and they weren't making the playoffs. And now with my brother there, people got a glimpse of how special he is. Like 6'10", he can shoot the three. He's excellent in the mid range. He can dribble. He can play pick and roll. And he's also good at fouls in the tournament. And he's shown the propensity to be able to play, make, and create out of the pick and roll and make passes. And all they were missing was a leader, someone who's been there, who's done that, who's professional, who can take all these young men and these rookies and show them what it takes to get to the playoffs. The type of consistency, the effort you need, how to be a pro, how to be a professional, how to take care of your body, how to do things like that. And my brother provides that. And then you add to the fact that, he's a great lead guard, a guy who can score, who can rebound, who can penetrate the lane. He'll make the game easier for guys. And he provides that proper spacing because he's such a renowned shooter that when Zion or Brandon Ingram are in their isolation situations, they're going to need less help. So I wouldn't know if they make it to the Western Conference Finals. They just need to stay healthy. And you're going to see this team continue to rise and grow because they enjoy playing with each other. They have excellent chemistry and roles are defined. So, they have a big three. And one of my favorite guys who I think doesn't get mentioned at all is a fellow Lithuanian, Jonas Valanciunas. This is a guy who gets 15 points, 11 rebounds, does the dirty work. He's strong, he's physical, he's an excellent screener. And I think he gets lost in the shuffle because everybody talks about CJ McCollum, everybody talks about Brandon Ingram, everybody talks about Zion Williamson. But Jonas Valanciunas is a guy who's steady, who's consistent, and who's shown that he's adapted his game as well, being able to shoot the 3-point shot, extending his range. But he's been excellent this season.
Yeah, Valanciunas is our guy. I think that he's a perfect regular season player. We'll see how it goes for him in the playoffs. But what do you think? Could they make the case for the title? You already mentioned about the West Conference Finals. Do you think they have what it takes to go until the end, or they should improve their team? For example, I was listening to Bill Simmons' pod the other day, and he mentioned that Nets are really dysfunctional and they might make some moves. And I remember that maybe it was him or somebody else on that show. I think that it was a pod with Roger Bell. Somebody mentioned that maybe Pelicans could go for a trade. Maybe they could go after KD. What do you think about that?
I think the Pelicans are 1 or 2 years away. I think maybe 1 year of making a playoff playoff run. Those guys getting that experience. Zion Williamson body adjusting, to the rigors of an 82 game season and then a playoff run. You got to remember he hasn't played a full season yet, so this would be a great year for his body to start to adjust. To see what it takes, to see what his body can handle, to get that confidence in it, and for all those other guys to continue to develop. You got to remember, CJ, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson are all under contract until at least 2025. So, you also have Herb Pope, who's one of the best defensive players there. And then you have this young core, Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado. So they have time. The thing is, KD is an excellent player. The reason I don't make this trade is because it mortgages your future. Yes, will you be able to win right now? Yes, but at what cost? KD is 33, 34 years old. And you would have to give up a young asset who you're going to have on contract for many years, who's already signed up, who you already know how they fit, what they do. And you would have to give up some picks and everything. And right now, the Pelicans are in excellent position. They have the Lakers pick for this season, which potentially could be a lottery pick the way things are going. And they have a core that loves playing together, that's shown their talent level and what they're capable of last season in the playoffs against the Suns. And now you add in once in a generational talent like Zion Williamson. You have to see that through. So there's no way I would make that trade without seeing at least one season of Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and McCollum. And then from there, I think you'll have a full picture of what could possibly be.
That's a good point, Errick. One of many good points you made in this pod. A pleasure to hear you again. And I think it was when you have a pod with somebody else, not in a group of at least 3 people, you think that it's going to be a quite short podcast. Even before the pod, when I was inviting the other player, I told him that, okay, join us and we will try to make it out in 50 minutes, for example. I see that we spoke for an hour and a half, and I believe that still there's a lot of time left, to discuss some other things, but let's put these things for the future pods that we will have. Thanks a lot for being here, and thanks a lot for your interesting thoughts, as always.
So thanks for having me. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you again.
And just for the end, guys, as I mentioned, don't forget to subscribe our channel. Don't forget to press like below this video for the future pods. Also, I invite you to join BN Plus community to become our subscribers, to make questions for the upcoming pods. Rytis and Augustas will be back on track here in studio in Vilnius. We will have a special Q&A episode. So to ask these questions, you have to become our BN Plus members, and then making the best question in the group, you can win the BasketNews hoodie, sweater, and all the other good things we actually have on shop.basketnews.lt. To become BN Plus members, join us on basketnews.com/plus. That's all. A lot of things were said. Thanks all for watching and listening, and see you soon, Errick.